Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, dating is complicated enough as it is, but add kids to the mix and, well, let's just say it's a whole other ballgame.
Oh, absolutely. In a whole different set of rules and considerations.
Exactly. So we're diving into Steve Harvey's Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man to see what kind of insights we can glean. We'll be looking at a chapter that focuses on the dynamics of blended families and, well, some of his advice is a little controversial.
It definitely sparked some strong opinions when it came out.
That's for sure. But hey, that's what makes it a perfect pick for the deep dive, right? So one of the first things that caught my eye was this idea of introducing your kids to a potential partner early on. I mean, how early are we talking here? Like the third date early?
Well, the book doesn't give a specific timeline, but it stresses the importance of not waiting too long. The idea is that if you wait until you're already deeply invested in the relationship, and then your kids and your partner don't mesh well, it can be pretty devastating for everyone involved.
Oof, yeah. Talk about a recipe for heartbreak. So I guess it's like ripping off the Band-Aid early on.
Exactly. It's about getting a realistic picture of what life together could look like. It allows both you and your partner to see how you interact with each other's kids in a natural setting.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about those awkward first encounters? I mean, how do you even set that up without it feeling forced or uncomfortable?
Well, it doesn't have to be a formal dinner or anything like that. It could be something as simple as a trip to the park or the zoo, a casual setting where everyone can relax and just be themselves.
Yeah, like a low-pressure meet and greet. I like that. But let's be real. Kids can be unpredictable. What if mine decides to have a meltdown right in the middle of our casual park outing? Talk about a first impression.
Well, those kinds of situations can actually be really revealing. The book talks about those inevitable moments of childhood chaos as opportunities to observe how your partner handles them.
Oh, I see. Like, can he handle a tantrum without completely losing his cool? Does he have the patience to deal with spilled juice and sticky fingers?
Exactly. It gives you insights into his parenting style, his comfort level with kids, and whether he's genuinely good with them or just putting on a show.
Okay, so it's like a secret test, but with real-life scenarios. Now, the book also talks about the challenges men face when they have children from previous relationships.
Hmm.
And there's this phrase that I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable with. Girl encounter-rations.
Yeah, that one definitely raised a few eyebrows.
That sounds a little, well, a little transactional, doesn't it? Like men are doling out time with their kids in measured doses.
I think it's important to unpack why that phrase feels so uncomfortable. It reduces the woman to a passive recipient, and it ignores the complexities of blended families.
Yeah, it makes it sound like the ex-partner is calling all the shots, like she's some kind of gatekeeper controlling access to the kids.
Exactly, and that's not always the case. Healthy blended families require open communication and collaboration between everyone involved.
So communication is key. And I guess that applies to all aspects of dating as a single parent, right?
Absolutely. It's about being upfront about your needs and expectations and finding someone who's willing to work with you to create a harmonious family dynamic.
Okay, so let's talk more about communication. What kind of advice does the book offer?
Well, it stresses the importance of being clear and direct, and it cautions against starting a serious conversation with the dreaded phrase, "we need to talk."
Oh man, those words are like kryptonite to a guy, aren't they? It's like an instant red alert.
Right. It triggers that fight or flight response. So instead, the book suggests choosing a time and place where you can both relax and really listen to each other.
Okay, so skip the formal sit down and aim for a more organic conversation.
Exactly. Make it feel less like an interrogation and more like a conversation between two people who care about each other.
Got it. Clear communication and ditch the we need to talk bombshell. What else?
Well, the book also talks about the importance of letting men be men.
Okay, now that's where things get interesting and maybe a little controversial. We'll have to dive into that one when we come back after the break. Okay, so we're back, and I'm really curious to hear more about this whole let men be men thing. I mean, is that just code for saying we should all go back to the 1950s?
Well, the book was written by Steve Harvey, so it definitely has a more traditional viewpoint. But I think it's important to remember that this book was written back in 2009. So yeah, some of the advice might feel a little dated now, but I think we can still find some valuable nuggets of wisdom if we look beyond the surface.
Okay, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So break it down for me. What does Steve Harvey mean by letting men be men?
Well, he argues that men have a deep-seated need to feel valued and appreciated, and that by allowing them to fulfill those traditional roles like providing and protecting, we're actually strengthening the relationship.
So it's like we're feeding their ego, but in a good way.
Exactly.
Well,
It's not about making them feel superior. It's about recognizing that men and women often express love and appreciation in different ways.
okay, I can see that. But doesn't that go against the whole idea of equality in relationships?
It's all about finding that balance, right? It's not about becoming helpless or subservient. It's about recognizing that men might feel more fulfilled when they can step up and be the man in certain situations.
So we're talking about things like letting him pay for dates, open doors, handle repairs.
Exactly. Those small gestures can go a long way in making a man feel appreciated and valued.
I mean, I definitely appreciate a guy who's chivalrous, but does that mean I have to give up my independence? I can change a tire and pay my own bills, thank you very much.
No one's saying you have to give up your independence. It's about recognizing that even in a modern relationship, those traditional gestures can still hold meaning and significance.
So it's not about going back in time, it's about finding ways to make those traditional roles work in a modern context.
Exactly. It's about understanding each other's needs and finding a dynamic that works for both of you.
Got it. And hey, speaking of understanding each other's needs, I think we need to talk about something that's on everyone's mind. Physical appearance. Does it really matter as much as we think it does?
The age-old question. Well, Steve Harvey does acknowledge that men are visual creatures.
So let's be real here. We all know that. But is it all about having the perfect body? Do I need to schedule a tummy tuck and a nose job to land a date?
Hold on. The book actually says that confidence and a woman's energy are far more important than any specific physical attribute.
So it's not about fitting into some impossible mold.
Right. The book suggests that if a woman carries herself with confidence and radiates positive energy, she becomes much more attractive, regardless of her dress size or whether she's had cosmetic surgery.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm all about embracing who you are, rather than trying to conform to some unrealistic ideal.
Me too. And I think that's a message that resonates with a lot of people, men and women alike.
Absolutely. But speaking of looks, the book does touch on cosmetic enhancements. So what's the verdict? Do men care if we've had work done?
The book's response is interesting. It basically says that men have different preferences, so what one man might find attractive, another might not. The bottom line is that if you're considering any kind of cosmetic enhancement, it should be for you, not for a man.
It all comes back to confidence, right? If you feel good about yourself, it shows.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that feeling confident in your own skin is far more important than trying to conform to some external standard of beauty.
Okay, so confidence is key.
Mm-hmm.
But what about things like weight and body image? I mean, does a woman have to be a certain size to attract a man?
The book acknowledges that men appreciate a woman who takes care of herself.
Makes sense. We all want a partner who's healthy, right?
Right. But it also emphasizes that if a man truly loves you, he'll love you at any size.
Oh, that's sweet.
Oh.
So it's about finding that healthy balance between feeling good in your own skin and taking care of your physical health.
Exactly. And it's about doing it for yourself, not for a man.
That's a good reminder. Now let's move on to something a little less superficial. What about those pesky bad habits? Like, is smoking a deal breaker for most men?
The book is pretty straightforward on this one. It claims that most non-smoking men wouldn't date a smoker long term.
Okay, that's fair enough. I guess it's not just about the smell, it's about shared values and lifestyle.
Right. And it goes beyond smoking. It's about finding someone whose lifestyle choices align with your own.
Makes sense. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the mother-in-law in the room. Does a woman really need to have a good relationship with her potential mother-in-law?
Well, the book is pretty adamant about the importance of meeting the mother.
So it's like a rite of passage.
You could say that. It's a sign that he's serious about you and wants to integrate you into his life.
Okay, I get that. But what if she's, a little difficult?
Well, the book does acknowledge that not all family relationships are created equal.
Thank goodness. Because let's be real, family dynamics can be complicated.
They can be. But even if you don't become best friends with his mom, making an effort to build a positive relationship shows that you care about him and the people who are important to him.
Okay, that's a good point. Family matters, even if they're not always easy to deal with. Now, let's shift gears and talk about something that can make or break any relationship. Communication. What are some of the common pitfalls we should avoid?
The book highlights the importance of being clear and direct, and it specifically warns against starting a serious conversation with the dreaded phrase, "We need to talk."
Well, those words are like nails on a chalkboard for a guy, right? It's like an instant signal that something's wrong.
Exactly. It triggers that fight or flight response. Instead, the book suggests approaching difficult conversations in a more casual and spontaneous way, choosing a time and place where you can both relax and really listen to each other.
So skip the formal sit-down and aim for a more organic conversation.
Exactly. Make it feel less like an interrogation and more like a conversation between two people who care about each other.
Got it. Now, what about those times when we need to give feedback, especially when it comes to, well, intimate moments? How do we offer constructive criticism without crushing a man's ego?
That's a delicate one. The book suggests being direct but encouraging, focusing on what you do like rather than what you don't. It's about guiding and encouraging rather than criticizing.
Yeah, no one wants to feel like they're failing a test in the bedroom.
Exactly. It's about creating a safe space for open communication and exploration.
Okay, so open communication is key. But what about his communication with other people, like his guy friends? Is it okay for him to talk about us with them?
That's a good question. The book actually claims that wives and significant others should be strictly off limits in conversations between men.
So no locker room talk about their girlfriends.
Well, ideally not. But the book does acknowledge that if a man isn't serious about a woman, she might become a topic of conversation with his friends.
So if he's constantly gossiping about you with his buddies, it's probably not a good sign.
Right. It goes back to the idea of respect and commitment. If he truly values you, he won't be sharing intimate details about your relationship with anyone else.
Okay, that makes sense. We've covered a lot of ground here, but before we wrap up this deep dive, I think we need to revisit this whole idea of setting those monopoly board standards for marriage. It's a powerful concept that deserves further exploration, don't you think?
Absolutely. We can't leave our listeners hanging on that cliffhanger. It's all about understanding your worth and setting those non-negotiable standards. So let's dive back into that when we come back for the final part of our deep dive.
All right, we're back. And I'm still thinking about that monopoly analogy. It's such a clever way to illustrate the whole idea of setting standards in a relationship.
It really is. And, it's not just about marriage. It applies to all relationships. It's about recognizing your worth and not settling for less than you deserve.
Right. No more bargain basement deals or the
Right.
Park Place, baby. But how do we actually put this into practice? I mean, it's easy to say we deserve the best, but how do we actually communicate that to a potential partner?
Well, the book suggests that we should be upfront about our desire for marriage and not be afraid to set a timeline.
So no more waiting around hoping he'll finally get the hint.
Right. It's about being proactive,
Yeah.
taking control of your own happiness.
I like that. So we should be setting a deadline for a proposal, maybe even a wedding date.
The book definitely encourages women to be clear about their expectations. And you know what? It says that men actually respect women who know what they want.
So it's not about being demanding or controlling. It's about knowing your worth and being confident enough to express it.
Exactly. And remember, setting standards doesn't mean being rigid or inflexible. It's about finding someone who shares your values and is equally invested in building a future together.
So it's not about giving him an ultimatum. It's about having an open and honest conversation about what you both want.
Precisely. And, if he's truly the right guy for you, he'll be excited to embark on that journey with you.
He'll understand that I'm not just looking for a quick fling. I'm looking for a partner, someone who's in it for the long haul.
Exactly. Someone who sees you as the Park Place you truly are.
And if he doesn't, well, maybe it's time to move on to someone who does.
Sometimes the most empowering choice you can make is to choose yourself.
This whole conversation has been really eye-opening. It's made me think about how much societal expectations influence our dating patterns.
I agree. And while the book may present a more traditional view of gender roles, it also raises some really important points about self-worth, communication, and finding a partner who truly aligns with your values.
It's about recognizing that relationships are a two-way street. Both partners should feel valued, respected, and equally committed.
Absolutely. And regardless of whether you agree with every single piece of advice in the book, the most important takeaway is to be true to yourself and to never settle for less than you deserve.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So there you have it, folks. We dove deep into the world of dating and relationships, as seen through the lens of Steve Harvey's Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. We explored everything from early introductions and blended families to the complexities of communication and, of course, that iconic Monopoly analogy.
It's been quite a journey. And while this book may have sparked some debate, I think it ultimately serves as a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to relationships.
Exactly. What works for one couple might not work for another. The most important thing is to find what feels authentic and fulfilling for you.
And to always remember that you have the power to create the kind of relationship you want.
So be bold, be authentic, and never be afraid to ask for what you deserve. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.